Hello, 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 and welcome to Nursing News You Can Use live at 5. I'm Tina Baxter, your host. Thank you for tuning in. Those of you that are on our Facebook pages, hello, how are you? Those of you that are watching us on YouTube, thanks for subscribing and tuning in and watching us whenever we go live. We cover everything in healthcare and news, particularly things that pertain to nursing. So I'm glad to be here to share with you today. We missed you last week. We had to be out, but we're back at it today, and I'm excited about it. So let's get started with our affirmation for today. And it says, listen not to the poo pooers, the doubters, the worrywarts. Listen only to the one and only ever loving heart and do whatever it tells you. Humans are trained to live in fear and to believe what they see. Badasses have faith and the audacity to believe in what they desire, regardless of outward appearances. That's our affirmation from today for the You Are a Badass calendar by Jen Sincero. I love this calendar. It just gives me a little extra boost. And so I'm going to say just go out there and do your thing. All right, we have a lot of news to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and get started in our first story. This coming from U.S. News. It says Texas judge tosses Biden era policy to increase nursing home staffing. A U.S. District Court judge in Texas on Monday tossed a Biden-era policy to increase staffing in long-term care facilities that participate in Medicaid or Medicare programs. In May of 2024, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, under then President Joe Biden's administration, issued a final rule requiring the facilities, including about 97% of nursing homes, to change their staffing requirements by providing 24-hour licensed nursing services at the facilities. Bet you are surprised that there does not have to be a licensed nurse in there, a registered nurse in there for 24 hours nursing services. Bet you're surprised to hear that. Okay, so that was the mandate. The mandate came after the COVID-19 pandemic heavily affected nursing homes and raised questions on whether enough was being done to care for residents at the facilities. The Biden administration said it was establishing federal minimum nurse staffing standards to provide residents with safe and quality care, address insufficient staffing at facilities, and, quote, create a consistent floor to reduce variability in the minimum floor for nurse to resident ratios. In response to the policy, the American Healthcare Association, Texas Healthcare Association, and other nursing home affiliate organizations filed a lawsuit in June against the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. In the Northern District of Texas filing, the plaintiffs argued that it, quote, exceeds CMS's statutory authority, affects a baffling and unexplained departure from the agency's longstanding position, and creates impossible to meet standards that will harm thousands of nursing homes and the vulnerable Americans they serve. Okay, that was their claim. The lawsuit states that the mandate to use the services of a registered nurse for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, triples Congress' original directive of 8 hours, 7 days a week, and is a deviation from standing legislation that leaves it up to each facility to decide what their residents need. So again, here comes the problem. I really do think that having more nursing oversight could, reduce the number of errors that we have, the omissions. Maybe it would improve the quality of the care because someone would be there that's responsible for the care that's delivered. Now, that's not to negate what the licensed practical nurse or LPNs or LVNs are able to do in the nursing home, but there's something to be said when you have that oversight to making sure that things get done. So that's kind of my take on it. But yeah, so this is what the judge says. On Monday, U.S. District Judge Matthew Kaczmarek threw out the Biden administration policy, citing that it's inconsistent with Congress' existing legislation. The filing listed current Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and others as defendants. Though rooted in laudable goals, the final rule still must be consistent with Congress's statutes, the court document states, to allow otherwise permits agencies to amend statutes, though they lack legislative power. Separation of powers demands more than a praiseworthy intent. So the White House did not respond immediately to a request for comment. The American Healthcare Association, which represents about 15,000 long-term care facilities and nursing homes across the U.S., called Monday's ruling, quote, a victory for our nation's seniors and their families. So I will have to say we do need to address staffing in nursing homes. That is beyond question. Um, Maybe there needs to be something to take up in Congress. We'll see. But anyway, that's the end of that. If you want to hear more about that, this was on NBC News. So that brings me then to this article here. And it says, this is from Skilled Nursing News. It says, big step in defeat. Legal experts weigh in on whether nursing home staffing mandate is legally dead. So after a federal judge in Texas vacated the nursing home staffing rule on Monday, operators are rejoicing, though some legal experts in the sector suggest the fight may not be over just yet. This is really a strong decision on both prongs of the staffing mandate. It hits all of the other relevant points as to how the unflinching mandate seeks to alter what Congress set in place. At Mark Reagan, managing shareholder at Hooper, London, and Bookman, the rule does not supplement, it contradicts. If appealed, I'm very confident that the district court's judgment will be upheld by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The Texas court's selection of a vacatur as the appropriate remedy, the action annulling the mandate, is an important point to note. It is essential that the mandate be vacated and that there be that certainty given the chaos that would ensue from any continued uncertainty as to the mandate. As said, nothing is final yet. The Trump administration now has 60 days to appeal, and if they fail to do so, the federal court's ruling will stand. But given Thursday's Department of Justice filing urging the appeals court to deny a preliminary injunction made in the Eighth Circuit Court, it is possible an appeal would be made in the Texas decision too. That said, it is worth noting that the DOJ will typically defend federal regulations until they are rescinded, regardless of the current policy positions of a presidential administration. The ruling is a big step in defeating the staffing mandate, but I don't believe it is the last step in that process, said Craig Conley, shareholder at the law firm Baker Donaldson. The federal government has a right to appeal, and I assume the federal government will exercise that right and appeal the decision, especially given the recent DOJ filing and its position in support of the staffing mandate. Moreover, Conley said by the ruling that Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services exceeded its authority in implementing the staffing mandate, the judge invited Congress to step in and block the rule in its entirety as questions remain on how much of the staffing mandate, if any, should remain in place following the district court ruling. And other legal experts didn't rule out the possibility of the matter heading to the Supreme Court. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep an eye on that. If you want to read more about this, go ahead and head over to Skilled Nursing News to read more. There's more in their report. So just to let you know, even though he did block it, it's not necessarily dead and it may come back. Okay. This leads me to some other things that are happening with health and human services. So I'll go ahead and read this. Now, I thought I'd bring this up, and those who are watching, particularly nurses, let me know your comments, what you think about some of this stuff that's happening. This is a response and a statement by the American Nurses Association on the organizational restructuring within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. There's been a lot of discussion and concern that vital and critical services will no longer be available. And so this is what the ANA's official stance has been. The American Nurses Association is aware of the recent personnel changes and organizational restructuring within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. These developments have sparked concerns among nurses nationwide regarding the potential impact on essential programs and services delivered by HHS in collaboration with nurses, patient advocates, and other healthcare providers. While we share some of the concerns, particularly about the consolidation of the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, and the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, we note that the Trump administration has indicated that key services, roles, and resources within the restructured agencies will continue to be met by other agencies and staff. The association will monitor the restructured capacity and promptly report any gaps we identify to the administration and Congress to ensure the needs of nurses and the public are met by our federal partners. It is imperative that Secretary Kennedy and administration leaders ensure the uninterrupted continuation of the vital work of these agencies. Federal agencies must have the necessary staff to carry out the public health, research, quality, and operational work that the American people rely on for their health and well being. The American Nurses Association appreciates the recognition that some programs and staff that are critical to the American public were terminated in error and that reinstatement will occur. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention programs that conduct surveillance and monitoring of outbreaks and disease, vaccine, education, and uptake, environmental contaminants, and other public health and safety support remain essential to public health, especially during bird flu and measles outbreaks in various parts of the country. Nurses rely on staff and programs across HHS, as CDC, SAMHSA, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the Health Services, the Health Resources and Services Administration, or HRSA, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, the National Institutes of Health, and the National Institute of Nursing Research to improve healthcare delivery and advance the science of healing and care. So there's more in the statement, but I wanted to let you know that there is a statement put out by the American Nurses Association regarding this. I am glad they at least responded. Let's see what happens in the upcoming days with this current administration. This brings me to another legal issue. Just wanted to let you know. So things that are happening in the legal sphere, I try to let you know. Anything that's going on. I found this quite interesting because it involves, this is from McKnight's Long-Term Care News. This involves a CNA that was from a staffing agency that's working in nursing homes. So those of you that are in administration, you might listen up on this, because I wanted to bring this to the forefront. So it says a Wyoming nursing home has been ordered to pay a $660,000 judgment for negligence after the state's Supreme Court overturned a decision that would have allowed the facility to pay just a fraction of the penalty. The Legacy Living and Rehabilitation Center will have to pay all of the damages to the estate of a resident whose daughter filed a negligence lawsuit against the facility following a July 2019 attack at the hands of a contracted certified nursing assistant. Under the contract that the Legacy had established with the staffing agency Focus One Solutions, which began 4 months before the incident, CNA Crystal Nalise was under the direction and supervision of the Legacy when rendering services, court documents from the District Court of Campbell County said. The district court also found agency nursing assistant Nalise to be an agent of the facility, not an independent contractor, and 75% at fault for the incident. The Legacy was held at 25% at fault. The Wyoming Supreme Court on Wednesday, however, reversed the district court's rationing of fault, citing it to be inconsistent with the jury findings and with the state law. The district court erred when it reduced the damages by the percentage of fault allocated to Ms. Nalise. Justice John G. Finn wrote, the jury was only asked to determine if Ms. Nalise acted negligently, not intentionally, and it determined her conduct was negligent. The jury also determined Ms. Nalise was an agent of the Legacy. We reversed the judgment and remand this case to the district court with instructions to enter a judgment in favor of Ms. Wilkie's estate for the entire $660,000. Margaret Wilkie had been a resident of the Legacy for 6 years. Multiple health conditions, including dementia, Alzheimer's disease, lack of safety awareness, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and hypoxia, required her to have 24-hour nurse care. During the incident, agency nursing assistant Nalise slammed Wilkie to her bed, then pinned her down using a bedsheet across her neck, according to records. The ordeal was witnessed by another CNA employed by the Legacy. Wilkie died in December of 2020 from complications of COPD that were unrelated to the incident. Several attempts to obtain comment from the representatives of the Legacy Living and Rehab Center for this article were unsuccessful. So, first of all, that's horrible. And I'm pretty sure there's probably going to be some criminal charges if they haven't been. But just to let you know, just in this case, there is now the Wyoming Supreme Court has said, even though that CNA was a contractor, was agency staff. She was actually working as an agent for the facility, and therefore the facility is at fault. So, for her conduct. So there you have it. Wanted to let you know. So think about that. All right, so let's get to this story. This is about the CDC. This is from NPR. This is a long story, so I'm not going to be able to go through all of it. But it says coal miners' health care hit hard in job cuts to CDC. This is the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, NEOSH. They had a mobile unit. So let's get into it. So Sam Petsonk grew up around southern West Virginia's mining communities, visiting patients with his father, one of the country's first doctors to specialize in black lung disease. When I was a child, I'd look up and I'd see coal miners seemingly larger than life, doubled over, coughing, scarcely able to walk, work, or breathe. I've seen it my whole life. I remember as a kid and still see it today. Today, Petsonk's whole law practice in Oak Hill, West Virginia, exclusively represents coal miners. He often takes cases of people sickened on the job, and he relies on records gathered by the Respiratory Health Unit of the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, a division of the CDC that runs the Coal Workers Health Surveillance Program. It offers essentially a very unique kind of guaranteed workplace health care. By law, it gives every miner in the country, roughly 50,000, access to care for free. The 25 people working in the unit were put on immediate administrative leave on April 1st. They are out of their jobs, along with about 10,000 other federal health workers later this spring. So I'm bringing this up because these things, we're just cutting to save money, and this affects real people, right? So I want everybody aware this affects real people and the health care of real people. So when we're looking to save money and save a few bucks, let's look at some places where we're not taking away the benefits of people who most desperately need them. So let's go on and hear a little bit more of the story. It says, the lab sent mobile x-ray units to mines to screen miners regularly. It authorized job transfers for miners showing signs of disease. And the unit also trained and certified doctors to read specialized lung scans. Petsonk says that the health service has become an essential part of mining life, but President Trump's sweeping cutbacks at the nation's healthcare agencies last week included this small team running a program coal miners are entitled to by law. He says it's a bedrock institution for the medical profession that has been obliterated. It's just unacceptable. The program's roots date back to the lethal Farmington, West Virginia mining explosion that killed 78 workers in 1968. The disaster led to the passage of the Federal Coal Mining Safety Act, which in turn added the miner surveillance program under the Respiratory Health Division at NEOSH. Late Monday, Petsonk filed a class action lawsuit against Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the agency he now runs, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, to reinstate the Respiratory Health Unit within the CDC's National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health that ran the program. Epidemiologist Scott Lanzey calls the nation's doctor for coal workers. Laney headed research at the Coal Worker Surveillance Program in Morgantown, West Virginia, until he was placed on administrative leave on April the 1st. Laney says with no staff, the Coal Worker Health Surveillance Program and its database of x-rays, medical records, and mobile screening vans are abandoned. He notes that the program single-handedly reduced black lung disease from affecting nearly 40% of long-term coal workers to as low as 2% around 2000. But in recent years, lung disease for miners have become a major concern again, Laney says, because coal increasingly comes from mines embedded in sandstone and which generates the dust that's 20 times more damaging to lungs than coal. That means miners are getting sicker, younger, and without the monitoring of coal miners, he says, people will die and no one will be keeping score. So there's more to this story, but I wanted to put a face to some of the things that are happening. Head on over to NPR to read more about this story. Okay. So this is a follow up to a story that we reported on a while ago. I think the last time we reported on this was maybe 22 or 23. And this is a follow up to the story that happened to come out. And it says former St. Kate's nursing dean enters guilty plea for swindling money from the school. This is from Fox 9 in St. Paul, Minnesota. Says the former dean of nursing at St. Catherine's University, who is accused of swindling more than $400,000 from the school, has entered a guilty plea. The plea calls for Laura Jean Farrell, 55, to pay $25,000 in restitution and serve a stay of a sentence up to 3 years of probation. However, Ramsey Court prosecutors filed a motion in October stating their intention to seek an aggravating sentence in the case. Her sentence is now sentencing is now scheduled for June the 11th. So in 2024, May of 24, she was charged with 6 counts of felony theft by swindle. According to this, during the alleged embezzlement, Farrell worked as a dean of nursing and entered contracts with Juan Bruce and his company, JB and Associates LLC, while she was romantically involved with him. Authorities said Farrell engaged in transferring funds to Bruce while he provided little to no services for the university. Charges allege JB and Associates was pretending to be a marketing company, but it was meant to, quote, obtain misappropriated funds. Court records show that between August of 2020 and November of 2022, the university entered into 3 contracts with Bruce and made 6 payments, totaling $412,644. Charging documents claim Farrell helped Bruce with some of the reports, and she had allegedly admitted to editing documents. On one occasion, authorities claimed that she had a written document explaining the services and reports he provided during his contracts, which was later sent to the university. The former dean of nursing told investigators she met Bruce on a dating website and did not disclose her relationship to the school because she thought the conflict of interest policy was meant for married people, the criminal complaint read. All right, so let's go ahead and read our next story, and then we're going to take a break. I thought I'd share this story again. I try not to share the stories to bash anybody that's going through problems with addiction. I'm not here to shame anyone for that. However, I am sharing this story because I want you to be aware if you're a practicing nurse and you have suspicions, this is how you check some of this. So this is coming out of Massachusetts. It says former traveling nurse exposed in sting operation sentenced for drug tampering in Massachusetts. So this is from masslive.com. It says a former traveling nurse was sentenced in federal court in Boston on Friday for tampering with morphine at a rehabilitation facility in Danvers, according to U.S. Attorney Leah B. Foley's office. Lorelei LeBroad, 55, of Hampton, New Hampshire, was sentenced to 3 months in prison by U.S. District Judge Julia E. Kobik. A nurse for over 30 years, she was licensed in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. LeBroad was also sentenced to 2 years of supervised release, during which she is prohibited from practicing as a registered nurse or any other work with access to prescription medication or other controlled substances, according to Foley's office. In 2021, LeBroad voluntarily surrendered her New Hampshire nursing license after being fired from a rehabilitation center in Derry, New Hampshire. She was accused of tampering with morphine bottles, according to the statement. However, she continued to practice under her Massachusetts license and was a traveling nurse from December of 2021 through at least May of 12th of 22, working at multiple nursing and rehabilitation facilities. Several facilities believe LeBroad was siphoning morphine from patients. In April of 2022, a nursing and rehab facility in Danvers contacted law enforcement. A nurse noticed a morphine bottle was wet and leaking, and other administrators found 3 other bottles which had been tampered with due to the color being lighter than expected and with puncture holes in the seal. So again, look at the vials. They look like they've been messed with. Laboratory tests found the bottles were diluted, according to Foley's office. Law enforcement began a controlled operation on May 12th of 22. to determine her involvement. They photographed and reviewed the bottles of morphine in LeBron's cart. Before her shift, there were two bottles of morphine for the same patient, one which was fully sealed and the other open, which the investigators took a sample. Law enforcement seized the two bottles of morphine before they could be dispensed to the assigned patient and found that at the end of LeBron's shift, the previously sealed bottle was a different color, leaking, and had multiple puncture holes. Laboratory testing found both bottles were tampered with and diluted. Foley's office said LeBron pleaded guilty to one count of tampering with a consumer product in November of 2024. So this is how you can detect some of that. That's why I wanted to share that, so that if you're working and you suspect that, these are some of the things that you can do. All right, let's go ahead and take a break. We'll be right back. Bullying, poor staffing, stagnant wages, no work-life balance. Stop being eaten alive. Find your joy, strength, and happiness. Become the leader you are always meant to be. Nurse entrepreneurs are using their skills to launch successful businesses every day. Make your dreams come true. Join the Nurse Shark Academy and come feel the sun at the nurse-shark-academy.biz. All right, let's get to our next story. All right, we'll save that one for next time. Okay, let's see. Where is this from? Let's do what I like to call things that are happening internationally. So our international news stories. So this is a story that came out of what's called Capital in Maine, and it says, have skilled nursing facilities become dumping grounds for the mentally ill? So I believe this is coming out of Canada. It says a couple of years ago, the trickle became a flood. Christina Locker White had long known that the skilled nursing facility where she worked in Bakersfield was receiving more mental health patients than it previously housed, but after the pandemic, those numbers began to skyrocket. Well, maybe this is in the U.S. Yeah. So it says, we're seeing more and more mental health patients come into my building, Locker White said, a 20-year certified nursing assistant. They are younger. Many of them are homeless. When I started as a CNA, we had more dementia patients or people who needed rehab after a stroke. Some of the kind of skilled nursing need for which we are all trained. These new patients require a different level of care, claims Locker White, which I have to say, having worked in both sectors, I can tell you, yes, they do. There's different needs when you're working with psychiatric issues. There's certain safety precautions that need to be implemented a lot of times that we just cannot do in long-term care unless you're specifically set up for that. So she says the new patients require a different level of care, who adds that their mental health issues are often intertwined with drug addiction. They act out, sometimes violently. We began to come to work every day knowing we're going to get verbally abused. I've seen nurses get hit. That dynamic is hardly new inside California skilled nursing facilities. Yes, this is in California. I apologize. It's California. Nor is it confined to the rehabilitation center of Bakersfield, where Locker White works. In 2023, the news site LAist wrote at length the increasing warehousing of patients with severe mental health problems inside the state's SNFs. But despite an abundance of evidence that caring for the severely mentally ill has become a de facto part of every work shift at such facilities, employees who spoke with Capital in Maine over the past year said they received virtually no training in that specialized area. Further, California doesn't require it, and it also doesn't limit much nursing homes' freedom to take on more patients with such issues. So that's part of the issue, is that you've got a mismatch of your populations, and I've seen it in real life. So I had a resident that had dementia who was on the same unit with a resident that was in detox. And that resident, younger and in her 40s in detox, it basically was there for IV antibiotics because they had slipped in, someone had slipped in something to them, punched the other person, the patient with dementia, because the patient kept talking and kept saying, the same thing over and over again. Well, we're used to that in long-term care. So it's not safe to mix those younger populations that are going through different issues with our older populations. It's just not safe to do so. and and that's an issue. And given the fact that if you had someone who was actively detoxing and going through withdrawal, the nurses aren't prepared to deal with that. They don't know how to manage those. And it's not as if the skilled facilities hire psychiatric nurses to work there. Even I would say the social worker really isn't is in the nursing home isn't equipped to really deal with those types of behaviors, because the behaviors you see with dementia is completely different, and the strategies that you would use will be different. So anyway, let's go on. Okay, so it says skilled nursing companies are not violating state law by taking in mental health patients for which they are generally paid out of Medicaid or Medicare funds. Mark Smith with the California Department of Public Health Communication Office said the procedure for admitting them includes a federal pre-admission screening and resident review, or the PARS form, right? A PASRR, PARS process is required for any individual seeking admission to a Medicaid certified skilled nursing facility to determine if an individual has a diagnosed or suspected serious mental illness. Okay, we know that, we do that. It says this promotes appropriate placement and informs the nursing facility of the need for specialized care. Okay, but then here comes the question: how do you provide said specialized care when no one is trained to do so? Further, the fact that a patient being seriously mentally ill does not negate the potential need for skilled nursing facility level care. I agree with that. I completely agree with that. However, it depends on what you're bringing them in. And so this is the problem. So we have many people that are coming in skilled nursing facilities that may not be appropriate for that. They might do better with a long-term acute care hospital situation, as opposed to coming into a nursing home where you have people with dementia who may not understand that, you shouldn't wander in this person's room and their right to privacy. So there's reasons for this. And I can say we can treat people with mental illness in a nursing home, but it has to be appropriate care. And even if they have an exacerbation, oftentimes we do have to send them out for inpatient psychiatric stabilization, and they're able to come back. But this is completely different than what she's saying here, because what they're doing is they're dumping in a population that may not be best served here. And part of that is because there are not enough beds, psychiatric beds, available. So further the fact that the patient, let's see, and he says, Chit Psychotel with the watchdog group says the PARS process is supposed to address this, but it's often ignored in many facilities. Again, that's exactly what I said. We've heard of facilities where there are hundreds of 911 calls each year, mostly to deal with resident altercations and violence. None of that addresses one of the most glaring problems. The nurses and CNAs on staff don't have the training to deal with such severe cases of mental illness, and that is what I'm saying. Nobody gave us any of that kind of training, said Kiefer Isaac, a dietary aide at the Centinela Skilled Nursing and Wellness Center in Inglewood. I've been here since 2000. Most of the stuff with severe mental health patients started recently. The California Department of Public Health Smith said that only Sacramento could make such training mandatory by passing a law. Okay. I say CNAs, nurses, get together, work with your legislator, and have them pass a law. Terry Carter, a spokesperson for Service Employees International Union Local 2015, the union that represents the workers mentioned in the story, said no state legislation is currently pending. The union works with a partner organization, the Centers for Caregiver Advancement, a training program for certified nursing assistants. That work includes a CDPH-directed 3 hours of generalized mental health training covering patients with intellectual disability, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, Parkinson's disease, and mental illness. What's needed, facility workers say, is an extensive state mandated training program to meet the challenges of an era in which skilled nursing facilities are taking in even greater numbers of patients with severe mental health problems. Absent that, the workers are left to bargain with their employers, facility by facility, to fund such training. So we'll see what happens with that. But I happen to agree with that. There has to be more training. I've noticed this myself here in Indiana, particularly during it was pre-COVID, but particularly with nursing homes. All of a sudden, it was like, oh well, we don't have any beds to keep them in the hospital, so we're just going to put them in the nursing home because they need IV antibiotics. We don't trust them to go home. But then here's the problem. You can't put them on the unit again when you got little grandma who doesn't remember that that's not her room and that's not her husband or whatever. So you have to be really careful about that. All right. Here's another story I found interesting. Right here, sticking in the U.S. And it says from Skilled Nursing News. From new case management models to Bitcoin mining, how nursing homes are growing profits. For nursing home providers, lean times demand extracting financial gains by not only using new service lines, but also value based care options more effectively, while thinking outside of the box to apply multiple uses for technology currently being deployed. Nicole Kaufman, Chief Transformation Officer at Genesis Healthcare, stressed the importance of clinical integration and deploying third party case management to tackle a high volume of complex referrals, a move that has been quite useful in maximizing reimbursement for the organization. At Genesis, the focus on clinical integration uses facility assessments to guide business plans and align with hospital systems for better patient care and partnerships. Kaufman said the goal is to grow revenue by targeting specific patient types, improving care quality, and partnering with providers, all the while ensuring patients can discharge safely without complications. As we think about revenue streams, we're just leaning in to going after much more specificity and honestly, where we see margin or growth is with certain patient types based on our reimbursement, based on our strength of care delivery services that we offer so that we can capture the best rate. Pennsylvania based Genesis is one of the largest post acute care providers in the United States, with a portfolio of nearly 180 skilled nursing facilities and senior living communities across 17 states. A panel at Skilled Nursing News Rethink conference featuring Kaufman and Heritage Operations COO Steve Hart discussed how skilled nursing providers are pivoting for the future using not only third party case management and clinical integration, but technology in very unique ways. Perhaps the most novel suggestion is how nursing homes can engage in Bitcoin mining. While healthcare organizations might not be directly involved in a cryptocurrency mining, exploring blockchain technology, a type of digital ledger for secure and transparent data management, is said to be useful for the sector. That said, the process is difficult, needing costly equipment, which uses a lot of energy and releases abundant heat, which is true. Having been around one of those servers, the heat coming from those things is insane. The heat doesn't have to go to waste, however, leading to gains on reducing a facility's heating bill while the Bitcoin mining is taking place. Illinois based Heritage owns and manages over 40 senior care facilities throughout the state, including skilled nursing. Last year, Heritage went through a big reset by selling 22 of its 44 SNFs. So there's more to this. I just thinking about this, it says there's a lot that they're looking at to streamlining processes. Here's another one. They said a greater deployment of technology is important for standardizing clinical care. Technology has improved fine-tuning dietary needs at Heritage and reducing adverse incidents such as resident choking episodes by allowing a close tracking of patient meals without miscommunication of needs. We saw an increased number of choking episodes when individuals were eating in their rooms. And what we found as a root cause was that the nurse who received that diet order maybe didn't communicate that to the kitchen and that the resident received their own diet type. By using technology, we help to eliminate the need for that communication and have created a more robust system. And sometimes extreme times demand extreme strategies. As nursing homes grapple with making operational changes to address the lean era for funding, Hart is advocating using creative solutions such as using heat produced in Bitcoin mining as an energy intensive process. So head on over to Skilled Nursing News to read more about that, but it was kind of an interesting take of what they're doing. And more on the financial sector. here in the U.S. Let's get to that. More in the financial sector. This came from Reuters and as reported on Yahoo News. And it says health insurance stocks soar after boost to Medicare reimbursement rates. Shares of U.S. health insurers jumped on Tuesday after a bigger than expected increase in the government's reimbursement rates for Medicare Advantage plans in 2026 signals some relief for a sector burdened with steep medical costs. Medicare-focused insurer Humana led gains with a 16% jump, while other health insurers, including United Health Group, Centene, and CVS, advanced between 5 and 10%. The 5% average increase, more than double what the government proposed in January, could help profit margins in the sector after post-COVID surge in demand for medical procedures drove up costs. The rich final rate also signals a supportive posture by the U.S. President Donald Trump's administration towards Medicare Advantage plans. Jefferies analyst David Windley and Stephen Couch wrote in a research note. The magnitude of the increase versus the provisional rates reinforces a politically influenced, more art than science reality to rates, they said. The Republican-controlled U.S. Senate voted last week to confirm Dr. Mehmet Oz, the celebrity physician nominated by Trump to oversee Medicare and Medicaid. The rate the U.S. government pays to private health insurers to manage Medicare for people aged 65 and older or with disabilities influences the monthly premiums these companies charge, the plans they offer, and ultimately their profits. The Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services have earlier proposed a 2.2% increase. The agency said the rate change mainly accounts for additional data on rising costs for insurers, including payment data through the fourth quarter of 2024. So just wanted to let you know, kind of keep an eye on that if you're invested in any insurance stocks that may maybe do well for you. Okay, this has come from Healthcare IT News. HHS employees fear IT staff reductions could destabilize the agency. With the reorganization of this U.S. Department of Health and Human Services announced last week, there's been little explanation of why whole departments have been cut. There's also been no analysis shared on how IT and digital infrastructure systems will be managed, their security maintained, and program operations assured after the intended upheaval. Without such analysis or transparency on plans after the cuts have been made, lawmakers and others can only speculate on the effects staff and contract cuts will have on those systems and the people relying on them. It's unclear if divisions will have any acquisition authority, fiscal oversight, or strategic continuity. HHS said by email Monday that its leaders focus personnel cuts on redundant or unnecessary administrative positions, according to the information provided as a background by the deputy press secretary at the department and referred to a previous statement. So, from former leader with CV Rich in Health Technology Programmatic Leadership across the federal agencies agreed to be interviewed without further ado. He said it was a huge shock to everybody. Our entire division of information technology was RIF'd. That includes our chief information officer, our chief security officer, and all of our IT folks who manage the IT for the agency. Okay, that sounds like a disaster, but okay. The Office of Management Services that has HR and contracts, they were also RIF. The former hybrid full-time employee with firsthand knowledge of OCIO operations took a retirement option that keeps their benefits and pay active until September 30th. There was never a plan, there was never a process, and there was never any input from any government employees on what's going on. None of the senior heads had any insight into this. None, nobody. But the idea that there were too many CIOs could be an oversimplification when the sheer amount of data and systems for the nation's second largest federal departments are considered. It was very CIO heavy, they acknowledged. But Part of that was the specialty of systems, the special knowledge that you needed to have with these systems, the capabilities that you need to have, and the certain developmental teams you need to have because they have very unique positions, especially at the National Institutes of Health. They change frequently because you're in a development environment. You have to be ready and be very flexible and agile, and you have to have your different types of security paperwork and government compliance that you need for these systems. While some think the department's CIO's designations were territorial, the sheer number of systems and their complexities account for a degree of necessity. So we'll see what happens. There's a lot more to this story. Head on over to Healthcare IT News to hear more about it. We just simply don't have the time to go through it. But this is, again, more things as you see that seem good on paper. Let's eliminate duplications. Everybody with CIO, we don't need many CIOs, right? But then you have to see they have specialized knowledge because not everybody can know everything about every system. And so you have people that have specialized knowledge about this particular software that tracks this particular thing that does. And so there's a lot to this. And I think what we're going to find out is that the people who are making decisions don't necessarily understand all of this, didn't ask the people that were actually involved in this. And it sounds like it's just going to be a big mess. So we'll see what happens. So we're getting ready to take another break, but I just want to share this one. This is from NPR as well. And it says how Trump's immigration policies could worsen the healthcare worker shortage. Okay. And it says more than 1 million non-citizen immigrants, 1/3 of them without legal status, work as doctors, nurses, nursing home aides, and another essential and increasingly hard to fill healthcare jobs in the U.S. As a result, President Trump's threatened mass deportations and tightened immigration restrictions, if carried out, could lead to bottlenecks, gridlock, and compromised care throughout American hospitals, nursing homes, and the entire healthcare system, warned Dr. Steffi Woolhandler, a Hunter College health policy professor and one of the authors of a research letter published last week in JAMA. We already have shortages, she said. If we start deporting or scaring away 1.1 million non-citizen healthcare workers, things will get much worse, and that's going to affect the healthcare of all Americans. After analyzing the 2024 U.S. Census data, Woolhandler and her colleagues estimated that nearly 17% of the healthcare workforce, or roughly 3.4 million workers, were born outside the U.S. More than 5% of healthcare workers were non-citizens, with about 700,000 who were here legally and more than 366,000 immigrants without legal status. Some regions of the U.S. rely particularly heavily on immigrants. Non-citizen immigrants comprise about 13% of the healthcare workforce in New York, almost 10% in Florida, and 9% in California. Nearly a quarter of physicians working in the U.S. were born elsewhere, and more than 6% are here legally but not citizens. One Dr. Rasha Alloway, a kidney transplant specialist and professor at Brown University's medical school, was refused re-entry into the U.S. from her home country of Lebanon at Boston Logan International Airport in March. The Department of Homeland Security said it found evidence that Alloway attended the funeral of Hassan Nasrallah, leader of Hezbollah, a political group that the U.S. has designated as a terrorist organization. That the U.S. deported the Yale-trained physician who possessed a valid visa sent a chill down the spine of the entire foreign-born healthcare workforce, Woolhandler said. People are feeling very afraid if they're foreign-born, she said. It's not good for the healthcare system for everyone to be afraid all the time. Neither DHS nor the Department of Health and Human Services replied to requests for comment. The Trump administration has enacted a series of measures and threatened others to end legal protections for millions of U.S. immigrants, creating uncertainty not only for immigrants, but also for their employers. The administration suspended refugee resettlements, and it revoked legal protections for hundreds of thousands of Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans, and ordered them deported later this month. In addition, uncertainty clouds the status of immigrants, including doctors and nurses brought to the U.S. illegally as children and who once received legal protection through the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals or DACA program. Anti-immigration policies and practices are likely to prompt physicians and nurses from outside the U.S. to consider seeking work in more welcoming countries. And as we repeatedly had reported earlier, Canada has been actually trying to woo nurses and doctors from the U.S. to come to Canada. So again, this is some of the things that we're seeing, and the story is kind of indicating that maybe that may be the case. So let me know what you think about that as we get ready to um, go to break. Let me do this one last, and then we'll take a quick break because we're going to go a little bit long today because I got a lot to cover, and I don't want to leave out the international news. So this is from The Guardian. It says Medicaid recipients demand Congress protect healthcare program. Medicaid recipients from 28 states marched on Capitol Hill on Tuesday to call on Congress to protect the health insurance program, a vital lifeline for millions of Americans from Donald Trump and his Republican allies. About 130 protesters from the U.S. held a rally outside the U.S. Capitol building holding signs that said protect our lifeline, protect Medicaid and SNAP, and benefits over billionaires. Medicaid is the largest healthcare program in the U.S., providing free or low-cost insurance for low-income adults, children, pregnant women, elderly people, and people with disabilities. SNAP provides crucial food benefits to low-income families. As Republicans in the House of Representatives plan to move forward with Trump's tax cuts, Democrats and public health advocates say their goal will be hard to reach without cutting deeply into Medicaid and SNAP. Organizers said Medicaid recipients would be holding 90 meetings with both Democratic and Republican members of Congress or their staff on Tuesday. Cynthia Travasio, 42 from Rockland County, New York, said, "We have mothers here who have said that without essential care from Medicaid, their grown children would lose the ability to live independently. We have a person here whose sister is in an assisted living facility. They would lose their ability to actually live." She added, "People don't realize that Medicaid is more than just insurance that you have. It actually helps fund our local hospitals, and so we're going to lose hospitals near us without Medicaid." Travieso condemned Trump and the Republicans for a, quote, heartless attitude. Their approach lacks focus on the people that actually elected them into power, and it's focusing on a select few that are pulling strings behind the scenes. Their approach is extremely dangerous, and we want to see something different happen from what they're doing right now. Individuals at the rally shared personal experiences highlighting how Medicaid allowed them to manage chronic and life-threatening conditions, maintain their independence, and have hope for the future. Eliza Brader from Bloomington, Indiana, who had a spinal injury that was misdiagnosed for 2 years, said, "I am proud to say that Indiana Medicaid saved my life." Bishop Christopher Lee of Ohio emphasized the broad impact of potential cuts, saying, "If Medicaid and SNAP are cut, it would be a major, major blow to our children, to our seniors, and to our families." So just wanted to let you know we're going to take a really quick break, and then we're going to get into our next story. Nurses, are you burnt out, frustrated, looking for something new? Are you looking for more? Nurses, are you ready to feel the sun? You will dream big and expand your consciousness as an entrepreneur. Your nursing license is your key to freedom. Join the Nurse Shark Academy at the nursesharkacademy.biz today. All right. All right. And let's get into our international news. We're ready for it. This is coming from Canada. Just wanted to share some what's going on with other places in the world. It says New Brunswick LPN wants the profession to be recognized as nurses in the province. This is from Global News. A licensed practical nurse is calling for others in her line of work to be recognized as nurses in New Brunswick. Ashley Moore started a petition after other LPNs received a letter stating that they had to stop referring to themselves as nurses on social media. That really was a kickstart to my push for this. That's what started the appeal, she said. Moore works as an instructor for future LPNs and says one of the main differences between LPNs and registered nurses is that RNs have more training to deal with unpredictable outcomes, such as intensive care patients. Moore says no one ever took issue with her calling herself a nurse when she was practicing in Ontario. LPNs can use the title in some other provinces such as Ontario, British Columbia, and Nova Scotia. When she moved to New Brunswick, Moore says she was surprised to learn that according to the province's Nurses Act, Only RNs and nurse practitioners can call themselves nurses. So there you go. Never would have thought that would have been the case when they're actually called licensed practical nurses. But I just thought that was interesting. Okay, this is coming. See if I can get it pull up. Here we go. Out of Iran. It's on Iran front page. I just wanted to share this. It says Iran faces nursing crisis on unlicensed Afghan nurses fill hospital gaps. The issue came to light after reports revealed that at least 30 unauthorized foreign nurses working in a Tehran hospital, though officials warn the actual number nationwide is likely higher. Ahmed Nati Najetian, I'm sorry, I know I'm not pronouncing that correct, head of Iran's nursing organization, said most of the nurses are Afghan nationals who were born and educated in Iran but lacked proper work permits. He emphasized that foreign nurses must obtain permits from the Ministry of Labor under current laws. The crisis stems from the immigration of Iranian nurses seeking better opportunities abroad, as well as the unregulated hiring of foreign nursing students and unqualified personnel. He pointed out that while Iran trains 15,000 nurses annually, only 10,000 to 12,000 secure public hospital jobs. He dismissed prospects of recruiting foreign nurses long term, citing unfavorable economic conditions. Authorities are now taking action, while a parliamentary working group developing new regulations. The nursing organization is pushing for stricter qualification checks and expanded insurance for home care services. However, the health ministry has yet to announce specific enforcement measures. Iran has hosted millions of refugees and asylum seekers from neighboring Afghanistan for years. Their number has unofficially soared to over 10 million in recent years. So, again, some of the same issues that we're facing over here and other places, I wanted to share that. Here's another story that came out and it was on my feed a lot, and I want to share this and give my thoughts and prayers. This is from the BBC about a nursing home fire in China that killed 20 people. It says 20 people have been killed in a fire at a nursing home in northeast China, state media reports. The blaze in Chengdi City, Hebei province, broke out on Tuesday night, local time. It was extinguished in about 2 hours. 19 people survived the fire and were taken to the hospital for observation. On social media, some call for a thorough investigation, while others express sympathy for the elderly victims. Old people already have mobility issues, said Weibo user wrote. I can imagine how desperate they must have felt during the fire. Nursing home and elderly care facilities have doubled between 2019 and 2024, according to authorities, as China deals with its growing aging population. So again, my thoughts and prayers go out to those individuals that were affected by this. But I just wanted to share that as a little bit of international news. Okay, let me see here. I just want to make sure. All right, so again, there is just so much. I do want to hit light on this story though. You've probably heard about it. I think we talked a little about it last time, but I wanted to share this. We're going back to the U.S. here. And this story came from WMZ News in Massachusetts. And it says, an investigation is underway at a Boston area hospital after several nurses have developed brain tumors. You're going into work every day with a feeling in your gut, and it's a lousy feeling, said one of the nurses. She's a longtime nurse at Newton Wellesley Hospital who didn't want to reveal her identity, but she's speaking out after being diagnosed with a brain tumor. She says she's not alone among her nursing colleagues. It's just getting to the point where the number just increases, and you start saying, am I crazy thinking this? Like, this can't be a coincidence. She said she's had surgery and they believe the hospital has not been supportive enough. We want reassurance because this has not been a reassuring past few months for a lot of staff members, and we just want to feel safe the same way we want our patients feel safe. A spokesperson for the hospital confirms it has been investigating the situation since December and has interviewed 10 nurses, 6 of whom have differing brain tumors. The hospital spokesperson also said no risk factors have been found in leaking the cases to the 5th floor. According to the hospital, its team has conducted a center disease a CDC prevention guided investigation that no environmental risks that could be linked to the development of brain tumor. The Public Health Department in Massachusetts said it's also looking into the cases while nurses are calling for an independent investigation. Paula Ward with the Massachusetts Nurses Association said, so I think the concern is we don't know what it is, and nurses are, scared, they're worried, and they want to make sure they're not working in an unsafe place. I think that the nurses should be the first people because we are the ones that brought it to their attention to be told, and we feel like we've been the last to be informed of anything. So officials have said that investigation is ongoing. They are looking to get an independent investigation. So I did want to share that with you. All right, I think that's going to be it for us because we had a lot of news today and a lot to cover. I want to thank you for tuning in. Just a few quick announcements because we always want to give our announcements and share what we're doing and what's coming up. So let me make sure I get this right. Let me pull this up. Don't want to miss anything that's important. I will say this, and I want to share this announcement that with sadness, I do want to announce the passing of a great leader here in Anderson, Indiana, Reverend Manuel Hunt, who was the founder and chairman of the Black Chamber of Anderson, the Anderson Madison County Black Chamber of Commerce, has passed away over this past weekend. We extend our condolences to the family. And just wanting to say that in everything, he wanted to make sure that things went on like they should with the chamber. He wanted us to carry on, and I spoke to him personally and heard him say that he wanted us to carry things on. So our condolences to the family, but there are some things that we are continue to do to honor his legacy, and one of them is coming up, and I'll be talking about that. So on April the 24th, we will be having our Black Chamber Corporate Luncheon. That will be at Energy Impact. If you are interested in attending that event, I do have tickets available for anyone that would like a ticket to the Black Chamber Corporate Luncheon. Please let me know. I do have tickets available. There's also a UR code as well that, on the flyers that you may see. But I do have physical tickets because I know some of you like to have that paper in your hand. So if you want to see me for those tickets, let me know. Just reach out to me through the show, or you can give me a call at 765-387-8046. 765-387-8046 to get tickets for the event here in Anderson, Indiana. Now, we also will be having Baxter Professional Services will be having our Anderson Alignable event, which will be on Wednesday, April the 23rd at 8 a.m. We'll be meeting at the Anderson Grill for a networking event with all small business leaders here in the city and elsewhere. Please come out and join us for that event. The only cost that you have is your meal. You pay for your own meal, but we just come out. We want to get to know one another as neighbors, as business owners, and how can we best support your business. So show up to that event, Anderson Grill, register on Alignable. I'll be happy to put that in the notes. I'll put the referral here for that as well. Let me put that in there because I think I still have it on here. Yes, I do. All right, so there you go. You can register at that event right there and sign up. Okay? All right. Sign up for our Alignable event. So that's going on the 23rd. And as always, we have CPR classes available. So our BLS renewal class will be April the 16th. So if you need to get your CPR on, please sign up for that and go to Baxter Professional Services Health Education.com. Our basic TB validation class is on also the 16th at 3 o'clock. Seats are going fast. So if you need to get your TB certification, sign up for that class at Baxter Professional Services Health Education.com as well. You can get registered for that class. All right. Let me see. Oh, and yes, I don't want to forget, on the 19th will be the Madison County Black Chamber of Commerce, J.T. Robinson Institute. Will be at Energy Impact at 9 a.m. Please register. Go to the Anderson Madison County Black Chamber of Commerce website and register for that event. If you're a business owner or looking to start a business, this is the event where you want to be. They're going to talk a lot about what we have available. All right. Okay, so we've got that going. Let me see what else we have. There's one other event I want to talk about, and that is Church Upon a Rock. We'll be having our annual WOW weekend or Women of Worship weekend. And our theme is a WTF Walking Through the Fire. Is that it? Something through the fire. Anyway, we're going through the fire. Anyway, withstanding the fire. That's what it is. Withstanding the fire. And so that will be starting at 9 a.m. on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we'll have our program during our morning service at 11 a.m. So please come out and join us at Church upon the Rock, 303 East 29th Street here in Anderson in the city. You can come to that event. We're looking forward to seeing people come out and enjoy, and in our new building, as we have rebuilt our sanctuary after the fire. It took us 3.5 years, but we finally are in our new building, so I'm very grateful for that. All right, that's it. Oh, before I forget, the ecumenical service for Good Friday will be at Eastside Church of God at 12 noon on Friday, April the 18th, Good Friday. So I hope to see you all out there for that event as well. There's a lot of events happening in the city. If you have a local event and you want me to give a shout out on this show for you, let me know. Other than that, I will see you later. Thank you for tuning in and see you next time.